I didn't break the planet. It was this way when I found it, all right?
Everybody laughed when I first said I wanted to be a comedian. Well, they're not laughing now, are they?
You know why it's laminated, don't you? To catch the tears of joy.
It's a Celtic phoenix. People are thankfully being stupid again.
Welcome to Gurus of Comedy.
With your host, Dave Keeshan.
Welcome to Gurus of Comedy. I'm on the line with Staten Island with Mickey Burns. G'day, how you going?
I'm doing fine, Dave. I'm welcome to Staten Island and welcome to New York City.
Wonderful. I used to be at Staten Island. I was over on this J1 visas way back, and they said like the best free trip you can do is take the Staten Island ferry from Manhattan to Staten Island.
Well, it's still free.
And it's still free, and then get off at the end, walk around, get back on, and go back over again. So I've been to...
Yes. When was the last time you were here?
About 10 years ago.
Well, now we have a big outlet mall right at the mouth of the ferry on Staten Island, and we have a beautiful 9/11 memorial exhibit. Now you could spend more than 1 hour here.
Mickey is a president of Quest Media Entertainment, and you have produced since 1998 a Profiles. Is it an insert into a TV show, about 10 minutes, where you profile a celebrity?
Well, Profiles itself is a half-hour celebrity interview program that airs on the NYC Media Network, which is channel 25 here in New York City. And it basically goes out to 20 million people in a 50-mile radius of New York City 3 times a week. And we've been doing that for about 20 years.
Yeah, I saw you've now covered about 500 celebrities by now.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, it's ongoing. We're continuing. Now after the pandemic, we're getting back into it. Originally, we were doing a news magazine for Time Warner. And the name of that was Special Edition. And in every episode of Special Edition, the news magazine, we would produce a 4-minute celebrity profile.
Okay, so it grew out of that.
Yeah, and I used to come back to the studio all the time and say, you know, I just interviewed Tony Orlando on Broadway, and I have this beautiful 30-minute interview with him, and we can only use 4 minutes of it. It's criminal. And I got the idea to do the long-form overview profile.
Okay.
And right from the start, it was a success, and the celebrities loved it, and the viewing audience loved it. And there isn't a lot of that out there today. And so our audience appreciates it, and we continue to do it 20 years later.
How much of work do you do beforehand before you talk to a celebrity, and how much do you dig into for interesting questions?
That's a great question, and I seldom do people ask me that question. But I would say on an average, about 10 hours.
Oh, really? Wow.
What happens is I have an assistant who hands me a packet, a research packet. A lot of it was given to us by the publicist of the celebrity or their management or whatever. And then once we have that, then my publicist goes deeper and does her own research. And many times if you look behind me, oh, you can't see, we're doing a radio thing. But behind my bookcase, I have like 300-400 books in there. And, you know, a lot of times they have a new book out, a new TV series, a new CD. So I have to listen, read, and research that. So I would say after all is said and done, and I'm handed the packet to formulate the interview to try to make it compelling and interesting, you know, it usually takes me about 10 hours from start to finish.
Okay, that's fairly hefty. And so do you feel like when you turn up, you're ready? Or is it still kind of some days it's easy and some days it's hard?
No, I'm on cruise control. I kind of have my system in place, and it works for me. And, you know, I think one of the keys going in, it's a half-hour show. And the last thing you want is to come up about 5 minutes short on questions.
Oh, sure, yeah.
I've done that on live television. It's quite frightening. I've had interviews with people for 15 minutes, and after 7, I was out of questions because all their answers were one-word responses. So the rule of thumb is if you have a 30-minute interview, go in with 40 minutes worth of questions.
Well, what has been your hardest experience then doing that?
Well, I think the hardest experience is that never happened. It only happened once. It never happened again. But I think, you know, a good interview is based on give and take. And many times, not many times, a few times, I've had celebrities that were so excited to talk about their entire life and career that they forget about the give and take. And what they do is they go off on a tangent, and they might talk after the first question, go on for 10 minutes. And then I realized very quickly I'll never get to all my questions because it's a 30-minute show, and they've just used 10 minutes for the first question. So I think it's important that they keep in mind the give and take of the rhythm of a good interview and a good soundbite.
And it's the opposite of comedians. They love crowd work. If they can not waste any material but just using the crowd, they're delighted, you know. Just let them go.
Well, it's different, you know.
Sure.
And it's happened a couple of times, and it makes it very difficult to edit, and it doesn't make for a compelling interview.
Right, because you can't like chop it or anything, or it's any edits.
Yeah. And sometimes I couldn't get in for a second question.
Oh, right. Okay. But I imagine after 500 of them, you can kind of guide it a lot more now, and you can see when they're drifting a bit.
Right. And also I learned as an interviewer early on, you know, I can't always control the interview. A lot of times the celebrities have their own tempo, their own feel, and you have to adjust to that as well. Not every interview is going to go the way you want it to go and the way you perceive it to be or the way it should be. So you have to be versatile, and you have to be able to roll with the flow. And
has there been any kind of type of people you wanted to get on that you just haven't gotten yet, or you want to really get on?
Yeah, well, there's a few. In my book, I just have a new book out, and I do have a bucket list. Most of the people on my bucket list I've gotten over the past 20 years.
Sure.
But at the top of, and I've met him, but I've yet to have him sit down. I've spent time with him backstage, is Tom Jones, Sir Tom Jones. But I've never had him in the I've had Engelbert Humperdinck show, but I haven't had Tom Jones. So he's certainly on my list of candidates that I definitely want to get on. And the other is Raquel Welch. I've always wanted to have her on the show. I find her fascinating. And Pete Rose, the baseball player, I had him scheduled, and then when the pandemic hit, it was canceled. But people are interested in his gambling in baseball and why he's not in the Hall of Fame, and he's a very interesting character.
So I imagine being based around New York City makes life quite easy to get your hands on these people.
I can't imagine doing this from any other location, maybe other than Los Angeles.
Right. Okay. Yeah, we struggle to kind of get people to come through. So anytime.
Yes, and a lot of times when they do my show, and I do it from Times Square, they leave me and they go to Sirius Radio, which is a block away. Go in the other direction. The Today Show is a block away. Good Day New York, which is a local, is Fox. Morning Show is 2 blocks away. So they can do, if they're promoting a book or a new project, they can do several interviews in one day because if it's scheduled properly, it's all within walking distance.
The profiles format seemed to straddle September 11th, and you mentioned that. How did you find going through that in New York? People might have wanted to want celebrity interviews around that time or not?
Yeah, I think I remember September 11th really well. We were just starting at that point with the show. It was early on. And there was a period of time where we didn't do interviews, maybe a month or two. This pandemic is far worse. The last interview we did was in beginning of March. And now most of the celebrities are hunkered down, and they'll do Zoom interviews and they'll do Skype and things like that, but they're afraid to come into the studio. They're starting to come back just now. But they're afraid to do that. And the celebrities who, let's say, are in LA or Chicago or other places, they don't want to get on a plane.
No one does. It's not just celebrities.
So they'll do their promotion on Zoom and on social media, not so much in person. So it is a problem. So now we're, March, we're into August, and we're starting to do some interviews coming up. But many of them say, it's not that I'm afraid to come in and do the interview. I'm afraid of coming and then maybe contracting it somehow and then bringing it back to my kids or my wife. Fear is, you know?
Oh, well, the fear is everywhere. We have a TV show, national TV show with international guests, but they are literally sitting people halfway across the room from each other.
Is that what they're doing? Yeah.
Yeah, it looks very kind of odd, kind of television, to be fair. I suppose they could even just kind of film it in such a way that they look like they're closer, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you could do that. I think the answer to this situation is simply, I don't think it's ever going to get back to where it was until we have a vaccine.
So would someone like in your business, in the media business, is the Zoom path or the Skype path or something better where you should be going?
Well, that's a good question. No, we're going back into the studio Wednesday, and we're starting with some people are willing to come back. We have to work really hard at getting them in there. But we tried the Skype, and we just didn't, our product that we've done for 20 years is in a pristine environment that, with the lighting and the sound and the set. And to go from that to Skype, which sometimes, the lighting is bad, the sound has dropouts occasionally. We seem to be doing okay today.
Yeah.
But I've been on other Skype interviews where every fourth word is a dropout.
Yeah, no, it's so variable. I did a radio course and they absolutely abhor telephone interviews.
Yes.
Because just even the basic telephone quality is so variable.
Yes, so we decided, as opposed to doing the Skype or the Zoom, that we would show our best episodes until this passed. And we have done that. And I'd rather see an old interview with Engelbert Humperdinck than a bad Zoom interview with anybody.
Well, one thing I have noticed with these celebrities is that, well, they got a bit of cash. None of them are doing too badly, and they seem to be kitting out some part of their house now to be the permanent kind of location, and it looks very well lit and very
it's
interesting.
It is getting better, but again, even with the talk shows late at night, Jim Allen and they're coming back now into the studio. As
a comic, I'm sure it's exactly the same in New York as everywhere else. But if we have no live audience, we have nothing. The product is the audience. If
they need to get back into the clubs and do it live.
Because if you're online, you're just sketch comedy. You're not stand up. It's kind of
that's it. So our goal is like yours and everyone else's in comedy and TV is to try to get back to somewhat of a normal situation where we could function as we did for the past 20 years. That's our goal.
Well, I hope we all kind of get back going. Like the New York State experienced one of the more harsher lockdowns in America, didn't?
Yeah. Well, we're not. Right now, New York is like 1%. Yeah, I mean we've done really well here with the quarantining and everything else, and now things are almost back. The last phase will be to open up restaurants inside and to open up the schools this fall. That's the last leg, really. Yeah,
we have the schools off here too, and we're all praying for those to get back. We've had all the kids off for too long. It's like, okay, that's enough now.
Last leg.
Well, I suppose this is a kind of a strange question based on everything that's happened in the past year, but where do you see yourself in 2 to 5 years? What's the plan there, or is it all been upended now?
Well, we just celebrated our 500th episode at the turn of the year. And, we never thought we'd reach that many, that people would still enjoy the show 500 episodes later, nor would the network continue to want to air it. But it seems to be as popular as it ever has. So right now we're shooting for 600. We enjoy it, though. We have a great team. We have it down to a science. The only thing that would stop us would be the lack of celebrity accessibility.
Well, actually, on that note, have you ever repeated any celebrities? Is it one time only?
No, I've had many celebrities on multiple times. Joan Rivers, I've had on twice. Tony Orlando, twice. I've had Darlene Love, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame singer. I've had her on 3 times. Because each time there was a different milestone. The first time she had a new album. The second time she was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And the last time she was celebrating like 50 years in the business. So with a milestone or a new project, whether it be she's on Broadway or a new album, it gives us cause and reason to profile them again if they're a compelling interview.
Okay. Well, again, being around New York, I'm sure you'll get another 500 easy enough.
Well, a lot of them live in New York.
Sure, I'm sure they do.
It's just a matter of when they'll feel comfortable coming into our studio, which I think is going to come up pretty soon.
So you started as a journalist, reporting on TV before you moved into this space.
Well, I actually got into the broadcast. I went to college for it. When I got out, it was before cable, so there wasn't a lot of opportunity. And then back in the 80s, I got my foot in the door at Fox Television. But not as a reporter. I was a sound man. It's my advice to people who want to get into business is get your foot in the door any way you can, and then work your way within to do what you really want to do. And that's what I did. I got in as a sound man on the news, the 10 o'clock news, and then I worked my way up to being in front of the camera with a lot of because I learned not only in college but doing the 10 o'clock news, I learned from the best here in New York day after day, and I became a sponge. So when my time came, I was ready for it.
I'd say New York in the 80s was probably a crucible of TV at the time. I'd say there was a lot of action there. If there was anywhere to be, it probably was there.
Yep.
And well, we only get to see it.
A lot of stuff. There was a lot of stuff going on. It was a very exciting time.
And do you feel like there's that much energy in New York now, or has it moved off to some business park on the outskirts, like in some industrial estate?
It's a great question. The other day I was up in Rockefeller Center this Wednesday, and a lot of the stores are boarded up. Not a lot of people on the streets, so we're still in pandemic mode. The people have not come back to the offices yet. They still seem to be working from home, and there's very little energy on the streets, to be honest with you.
But in general, like more about the business, there's still a lot of the TV production business is still on the island of Manhattan. It hasn't kind of been moved off.
It's just starting. Movie production, television production is just starting again now.
Right.
They've been on hiatus for about 6 months.
Oh, I was talking about in the past 5 years.
Oh, it's been great.
Yeah, it's still
of the world. There's production going on in all 5 boroughs.
Yeah. Well, it's just like it's an expensive place to do that sort of stuff. Like we find even here, if it's anyway expensive, it's get out of the city centre and find an industrial estate where it's nice and cheap, and we'll dump you all there.
Yeah, not in New York. In New York, most of the productions have no problem writing the checks.
All right, that's pretty cool.
No, they don't think twice.
What are you working on at the moment now? You said you had a book. What's your book about?
Yeah, years ago, I had a fella, I don't know if you remember him. His name was Chuck Barris, and he was the host of the Gong Show back in the 70s and 80s. Big show. So during our interview, he stopped me in the middle and he said, "Mickey, I think you have a book in you." I said, "Well, yeah, all the experiences for 500 episodes, you must have a lot to talk about." And he was right, but I said, "Chuck, I don't have the time to write a book." He said, "Write 1 page a day, and by the end of the year, you'll have your book." So one day I started writing, and I realized quickly I couldn't write 1 page. I wrote in clusters, 10, 12 pages. But he inspired me to write my book. It's called From the Projects to Profiles, a Memoir. And in it, I write about my fondest interviews, the best memories of many of the interviews that left a profound impression on me. And I do a lot of quotes. And at the end of every episode, I ask the celebrity, what do you hope your legacy might be? And what we've done is we've gone back into each interview, and we took the answers to all the legacy responses, and we put those in the book. So it's been a labor of love to write it. And so it's been out since the beginning of the year, and it's doing really well. And you can find it on BarnesandNoble.com, Amazon.com, Walmart.com. It's everywhere. It's called From the Projects to Profiles, a memoir. Currently, I'm working on the second book. Dave.
Okay. Did you not learn your lesson from the first one?
Yeah, well, yeah, I'm going to have 2 books in 1 year. And the second book is a coffee table book. And the way that happened was I asked my photographer, who's been with me for 20 years, one day, just out of the blue, I said, how many pictures have you taken on the set, in and around the set, for the past 20 years? He said, I have no idea, but I'll go home, I'll check my computer, I'll get back to you tonight. So he gets back to me later that evening. He said, Mickey, I have 14,562 photos. I said, you're kidding. I said, that's enormous. So I contacted my publicist, who then in turn contacted the publisher. And within a week, I had a contract to do a coffee table book in photos, chronicling the 500 episodes of Profiles.
Was there any, have you gone through the photos? Were there any surprises in there?
A lot. Yeah, because, a lot of the photos I had never seen.
Right.
And so it was, heartfelt to see, my time with Smokey Robinson or Aaron Neville and Sebastian Maniscalco. Sometimes, you forget the interview as it was. You might remember 1 or 2 highlights from it, but to see the photos, it was really special to see all of them again. And that's what I've been doing during the pandemic, and that is going over the 14,000 and figuring out a format for the coffee table book, of which we are now in the final leg of fine tuning it, and that should be out by November.
Okay, so you've got your. So how many photos did you whittle it down to?
Well, I think we whittled it down to probably about 300.
Okay, that's not too bad. Yeah, so
it might be 400. I haven't counted them, but it's a lot, but not 14,000.
Yeah, sure. I just had a newborn baby there earlier this year, and I'd say we're already up about 2,000 photos. I was like, oh God, don't know if I want to go back through them again.
Yes. Yeah, I know. You never have enough photos when you have a child.
Yeah, you're right. Okay, Mickey, I'd like to thank you for coming on today. And I'm going to sign off and say I'll put all this on the show notes. I've been Dave Keeshan, and we are on wherever you can get podcasts. And we will see you again. Goodbye.